you. Thank you to the Kelley Club for inviting me. I'm still a little bit under the weather, as you can tell from my nasal tone, but I am getting better. Last night with the debate, I figured to get a little bit of adrenaline pumping, and maybe that would help to clear my sinuses, but it did to a certain extent. I don't know if you may remember the story, but there was a little girl, and she wanted to do good things, and so she wrote a letter to God. She said, "Dear God, if you give me $100, I'll do good things with it." And the postmaster got it and didn't know what to do with the letter, so the postmaster sent it to the president. And the president said, "Well, that's cute. You know, the little girl, she'll think, let's send her $5. She'll think that's a lot of money." So the little girl gets $5, and she's kind of underwhelmed by it, but her parents said, "Always write a thank you." So she did. She said, "Dear God, thanks for the money. But next time, don't send it to Washington. They stole 95%. I think the moral of that story is probably the moral of one of the reasons I run for office and the philosophy that I carry with me. That is that most money sent to Washington isn't used very effectively and is often counterproductive. We send billions and billions of dollars to Washington. We beg to get some back. But often what we send there is actually used in a way that it actually injures the very businesses that fund government. Not to mention that they spend money we don't have. They basically borrow about $1 million a minute. Now, you may have seen the news. The Fed is talking about raising the interest rates. And you'll see all the pundits, and you all probably have an opinion. Is it a good thing or a bad thing to raise the interest rates? Well, I'm kind of agnostic on it, but it's kind of like if you ask me, all right, should the Politburo raise the price of bread or lower the price of bread? Well, I like lower prices, but the real question should be, should the government be involved with setting prices? And what amazes me about the Federal Reserve setting interest rates is that almost to a person, conservative economists throughout our country will say wage and price controls are a huge mistake. And that the pricing mechanism, the free and open pricing mechanism, is what allows the great distribution of products. The great wealth in our country is because we allow the freedom of price of bread or iPads or chairs or clothes or whatever service to go up and down. And the marketplace finds a price at which the most amount of goods are distributed to the most amount of people, and that's the beauty of capitalism. So we have this great capitalist society. We all acknowledge this, and most economists will say, yes, we have to have free prices. You would never want to set the price for wages or the price for goods. And yet we very carelessly, I think, allow this power to go to the Federal Reserve. And so what happens is the price of money is set by basically a Politburo, a group of people that are appointed by government set the price of money. But just like the price of bread, they have no idea what they're doing. The reason the Soviet Union failed was because they couldn't come up with something so simple as to determine what is the correct price of bread. Now, you could say there are moral reasons for prices, and you wouldn't be an economist, but you would be a politician trying to say, this is the appropriate price for the price of bread. But the problem is if you don't let the market determine the price of bread, if you set the price too low, the bread is all gone, and the shelves are empty. If you set the price higher than the market price, then the bread rots on the shelves and a black market develops. So the thing is we all know that. Everyone here knows that we shouldn't set the price of bread, and that would destroy our economy, and that was the precise failure of the Soviet Union. And yet we sit blithely and let the Federal Reserve set the price of money. And you say, well, it's so complicated, the market can't do it, we've got to have the Fed. We've always had the Fed. Well, we've had the Fed for a long time. But think about whether it's a good thing or a bad thing. We're in Las Vegas. I understand there was a little bit of a real estate problem here. Ask Kenny, he said there's still some left. Why did it occur? I'm not sure I understand exactly why it occurred more here than anywhere else. But why did it occur? What happens is, part of it's government policy, but a lot of it has to do with interest rates. Because what happens when, let's say there's 10 home builders in Las Vegas, and they start building homes, and the interest rate is 2%. And let's say they're selling homes like hotcakes, and then the next year there's 100 builders, and there's more people wanting to borrow money and build houses. If this were a normal supply and demand situation, what would happen? The price of the money would go up. And so what happens in a normal marketplace, in a capitalistic marketplace, When the economy heats up and more people start making things, the price of the money goes up, and then the only people who can build houses when the interest rate is 10%, everybody can build a house at 2%. But how many can build a house and make money at 10% less? So it slows down, and only the most efficient of home builders can build houses, and everybody starts taking precautions. And you get feedback. What is probably the most universal of all feedbacks throughout the economy? Interest rates. Well, what happens to an economy if you set the interest rates below the market rate? If you continue to tell people everything's okay, you can build houses as much as you want. And Ken was telling me his story about when he decided to sell houses. I hope he won't mind you mentioning that. But in my neighborhood, when I decided that something was going a little crazy, is when one guy bought and sold 4 different houses in my neighborhood, made 30% each time in 1 year. That's an illusion. That's not real. In medicine, we have something we call homeostasis. It's a word for the maintenance of stability. So when you eat your meal right now, your blood sugar is rising, and as your blood sugar is rising, insulin rises to counteract it. That's what interest rates are. So as you begin to have an upsurge in the economy, the only thing that counteracts it, or the thing that causes there to be a cyclical loop, is you got to allow interest rates to be the market rate of interest. And so the reason I bring all of this up, this long-winded lecture to you on what I think caused the crisis in housing is, if we don't learn from the past, if we don't have a discussion of this, how are we ever going to prevent it from happening again? There are some who argue that there is now an asset bubble that has been created by the quantitative easing, by new money, easy money, and low interest rates again. There are some who are even arguing that there's a real estate bubble. Now, that would be dreadful if you haven't yet gotten back to your peaks, and you're only halfway back to your peaks, and there actually is a real estate bubble forming. I don't know. I'm not smart enough to tell you what the interest rate should be. I'm not smart enough to tell you what the price of bread should be. But I am smart enough to tell you that we should all recognize an economic system where prices are left to the marketplace, and that distribution of knowledge, that instantaneous distribution of knowledge, leads to great wealth and prosperity. As a country, I think we're losing some of that knowledge, though. We now have the highest corporate tax rate in the world. Canada is 15%. I tell people I am embarrassed to compliment Canada. To say that somehow we are less friendly to the marketplace and less friendly to business. I spent most of my life beating up Canada about socialized medicine and all the terrible big government things they do up there. Their corporate tax is 15%. Ours is 35%. You want business to be in America, you want to attract business to Las Vegas, you got to have tax rates that are competitive. Money goes where it's welcome. We have a more global economy than we've ever had, and money will go and businesses will go where they're welcome. The president doesn't understand any of this, all right? How do the people on his side, and I know this is not partisan, but how do people on his side react to this? How does the Secretary of Treasury respond to companies inverting and going overseas? They just want to ban it. They don't want to understand the impetus for why people are leaving the United States. They just want to make it against the law. The thing is, you really can't stop it. You can set up some different laws. You can try to prevent companies from going, but money is fluid, and money will go where it wants to go. But the thing is we have Burger King reincorporating. Now we've got Pfizer wanting to go to Ireland. We also have a lot of great companies that are overseas and have money and would like to bring some of it home. What do? Geniuses in Washington tax it again. So if you're in Ireland and you're paying 12% like Apple does over there, good for them. They found a great place to do business. They're making a ton of money. They sell stuff overseas, and they're paying their taxes. We tell them to pay 35% on top of their 12%. And so how much money does Apple bring home? Zero. There's $2 trillion in profit overseas. How do you get it to go home? Make it welcome. In 2005, we lowered the rate to 5% for a year. $300 billion came home. I have a bill right now. I'd go to 5, but I have a Democrat co-sponsor that will go to 6.5 to bring the money home. We do it for 5 years, and we put the money into the road fund. That's another way to get the other folks on board. But the thing is that we can't get it passed because in Washington, the whole place is status quo and inertia rule the place. We can't get anything done. What I would say is, why don't we just have simple bills and just lower some rates? But in Washington, what everybody wants is revenue-neutral tax reform. What does a revenue-neutral tax reform mean? Half of you pay more, half of you pay less, and the net result is zero. But you know the reason it doesn't pass? Because the half of you who are going to ask to pay more all call us up and are unhappy about passing something where half of you pay more, half of you pay less. And one man or one woman's deduction is another man's expense or another woman's expense. It all depends on whose business you're talking about. The LIFO, last in, first out, the accounting thing. I have a Brown Foreman distillery, and it's part of their business model. It's a family business. And they say it would destroy their business model. Take care of it. They've predicated their business model on this for a long time. But President Obama says, oh, that's how we'll pay for lowering the rate. You just get rid of LIFO. Or we get rid of corporate checks. That's simply an expense. That's just simply corporate expense. I would do the opposite. In fact, in my tax plan, we let you expense everything, 100% expensing in the first year. The Tax Foundation says that alone, that one simple thing of letting you expense everything in the first year, would create 900,000 jobs and add 5 percentage points to the GDP over 10 years. Think about it. See, I'm not a big business person. I have my little doctor's office, and I went to buy my furniture for my lobby from Office Depot. I went there myself to get it, all right? So I get $5,000 worth of office furniture, and then I tell my accountant at the end of the year, well, certainly I can write off the $5,000 against my profit. That cancels out my profit, right? He says, yes, over 36 years. It's like, well, good luck on the furniture lasting 36 years, and then good luck on me lasting 36 years. But imagine if I'm allowed to write it off in 1 year. If it's wearing and tearing in the first 4 or 5 years, I'll buy some more. So it's an incentive to continue to buy and purchase things. But we don't do it that way. We do such dumb things in our country. You know what Canada did when they lowered their tax rate? A one-page bill, they just started lowering the rate. We've got to simplify things in Washington. All these corporations come to Washington and lobby, and they're all into the ins and outs of this revenue-neutral tax reform. It's been 5 years. They've been talking about it for 5 years. It's never going to happen. Now they're saying, oh, it's going to happen when we finally get a Republican president. You know, I'm not even sure I'm for it if they pass it. If you tell me you're going to lower the corporate rate to 25%, but you're going to get rid of a lot of what I consider to be traditional expensing, I may not be for it. Because what if I'm in the oil and gas industry and I pay somewhere, my effective rate's between 15 and 20? I sure the hell don't want 25 without an old depreciation allowance or other things that I've become accustomed to. I want lower taxes and lower rates and less money going to Washington. So we should get rid of this sort of fiction that we are for revenue neutral. I don't want the government to get the same amount of money. I want the government to get less money. In fact, the way I look at it is there's a productive sector, and I'm looking at it, and there's the non-productive sector, and I see it every day in the halls of Congress. They know nothing about money. In fact, they're bad with money. Don't give them anymore. They are terrible with your money. I'll give you an example. This week, what are they going to do with your money? They will have a 2,000-page bill on Friday. They still don't know what's in it. They'll stick all kinds of crap in it tonight, after hours. Nobody's going to know what's in it. I'm a senator from a state. I was elected by a whole state. I will have no idea. They will not tell me what's in it. They'll just give me two choices. They'll say either government shuts down and you're irresponsible, or you're going to step up and be an adult, or we're going to keep government open. But you know what? Maybe keeping the government open that borrows $1 million a minute is not a good idea. Maybe we should let it expire and begin to reform it. I'll give you a couple of examples of the way the government spends your money. This is out of the Defense Department. This is why I'm having this debate with the rest of them on the stage. Mark Rubio wants to increase defense spending by $1 trillion. Maybe we've got to spend what we have wisely. Maybe we've got to look at our expenditures. Out of the Defense Department, we spent $43 million on a natural gas station in Afghanistan. They don't even have cars over there, much less natural gas-burning cars. I guarantee they'll be ripping the copper tubing out of the place within a year, reselling stuff, or the Taliban are bombing. But we don't have $43 billion. We've got to borrow the money from China to send it to Afghanistan. We have spent more in Afghanistan than the entire Marshall Plan. But not much of it to good purpose, because the stuff we build gets blown up. Until they want to have a peaceful society over there, until they want to get rid of radicalism and extremism, there's never going to be a development of a country over there. Not to mention the fact that Afghanistan is not really a country. Neither is Iraq. These were artificial constructs drawn up by Western European after World War I. They didn't take into account all the different tribal natures over there. None of the people really believe and feel any allegiance to a central capital over there. But we never fixed and moved out the waste in government. $43 million for a natural gas station. We spent $800,000 in Afghanistan last year to develop a televised cricket league. Once again, not a brilliant idea because we don't have TVs, all right? So I think 1 in 10,000 people in Afghanistan has a television. I don't care if they all have television. Why is it our job as a country to develop a televised cricket league for Afghanistan? We spent $250,000 last year bringing 24 kids over from Pakistan to space camp in Alabama. Now, if you want to do that, it's good for international relations, you do it. We don't have any money in Washington to do that. We spent a couple $100,000 studying Japanese quail to see if they're more sexually promiscuous on cocaine. I think we could have just stipulated that. You know? But the reason it never gets fixed is because all of it gets glommed together in one bill. It is irresponsible, it's a crummy way to run government, but that's what we do. It's been 10 years since we passed individual appropriation bills. 10 years. And nothing gets fixed. So if you're not doing individual bills, what are you doing? You're just continuing more of the same. There are no reforms. And if there is any reforms, there's usually some special interests on both sides. Mark my words, in the 2,000-page bill that comes forward, there'll be some stuff in there. There'll be either some pork, or there'll be a special deal for either somebody in business or somebody in labor. Nobody will know it till after the fact, and we put it in the dead of night. It's a bad way to run your government, but that's why we're borrowing $1 million a minute. If I had my way, I would make government much smaller and make the private sector bigger. My tax plan would get rid of the entire tax code. We'd have a 14.5% business tax, a 14.5% personal income tax, and we would get rid of the payroll tax. The payroll tax would be included in the business tax. Would it be a little bit less money for government? It's about $2 trillion less over 10 years. But over a 10-year period, the Tax Foundation actually scores ours as causing enough growth to actually get back to breaking even. But I don't really want to break even. I want government to be smaller. I want government to get out of the way. But I will tell you, it's horribly broken. If you sit back and think, oh, well, if we just get a Republican over a Democrat, it'll be all better. It won't. Both parties are screwing up the country. Both parties are at fault. There is an unholy alliance between the right and the left. The biggest clamor to raise spending, louder probably than the left, is the right. Say, we've got to have more military spending. They're hysterical. We're hollowing out the military. We're defenseless. It's complete and utter crap. All right? We spend $600 billion on our military. More than Russia, plus China, plus 8 other countries. We spend more than 10 countries, the top 10 countries behind us combined, we spend on the military. Military spending since 9/11 has gone up 50% in real terms. We just need to spend it wisely. We also have to decide how you want to spend it. Are you prepared to spend another $1 trillion to go back to war in Iraq? We have to defend ourselves, but I don't think we need another Iraq war. We are less safe because we topple Gaddafi. We will be less safe if we topple Assad. This is a big debate. It isn't the simpleton or the simplistic nature of, oh, I'm for strong defense and you're weak on defense. No. It's about how are we going to be strong in defense? Are we stronger from bankruptcy court? Do we project strength from bankruptcy court? These are the debates we have to have in our country, and we're not having them. I'm trying to be part of that debate, and if all of you will just answer your phone and do the polls, maybe our numbers will change. But the bottom line is, it's easy in a time when we've been attacked just to say, we need to send 500,000 soldiers to the Middle East. We need to increase defense spending by $1 trillion. But you know what? We have to look and learn from history. The same way we have to learn what happened with interest rates and the housing crisis and the housing boom and bust. We need to do the same with our military. We need to do the same with our debt. But I think there's ample evidence to say that we haven't been doing a good job. What I'm asking you to do is reevaluate your government. What I'm asking you to do is decide, are you getting what you paid for? Are you happy with what you're getting from government? I would say it's time, clean house, and let's start over again. Thank you very much.